Welcome back to the deep dive. I'm really excited for today's topic because it's one you specifically requested,
Oh, yeah.
how to think more clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and we all know these days, clear thinking.
Oh, it's essential.
It's more valuable than ever, right? To help us with this deep dive, you've given us Rolf Dobelli's The Art of Thinking Clearly.
Yeah, I love that book. It's like a guidebook for
There's
for navigating all those mental traps we fall into.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
so let's jump right in. The book starts by talking about happiness
Mhm.
and why it can be so elusive.
Yeah.
This idea of the what is it, the hedonic treadmill?
Yeah, the hedonic
But
treadmill.
that really grabbed my attention. It's like we're always chasing after the next thing you know,
Right.
thinking it'll finally make us happy.
Yeah. Yeah, and it never quite does.
It never quite works out that way. Like imagine you get that promotion you've been working towards forever.
Yeah.
You're ecstatic at first, of course,
Oh, absolutely.
right?
Right.
But then, I don't know, a few months go by. You get used to it, you adapt,
It's the new normal.
and that excitement,
Gone.
gone. You're running and running, but not really getting anywhere, at least in terms of like lasting happiness.
It's just like, think about that friend who buys their dream car.
Ugh, I know exactly what you mean.
6 months later, it's just a car.
Just a car. Dobelli's point is that like material stuff, achievements, they give you a temporary boost,
Yeah.
but they don't really change your baseline level of happiness.
Exactly. And he suggests focusing on things that have a more lasting impact.
Right.
So like cultivating good relationships, pursuing passions, new experiences. Those are the things that can really lead to a more fulfilling life. And even he says we should like actively try to avoid the things we just can't adapt to.
Yes.
Things like horrible commutes or constant stress.
Oh, some things you just never get used to.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what are some things you just can't adapt to?
Oh gosh. I think for me it's clutter. Like a really cluttered workspace just drives me crazy.
Yeah. No, I can't stand a messy inbox.
Ugh, yeah, inboxes. But, on a more positive note, what are some things that really get you excited? What are those passions or experiences that make you lose track of time?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think for me, it's getting lost in a good book
Ooh, I like that.
or spending time with my family, just being present.
Ah, that's lovely.
Now, moving on from happiness, Dobelli takes us into this world of biases that really warp how we think. Honestly, some of these were shocking.
Right.
Like, take association biases, for instance. He tells this story about Kevin, and he believes his green polka dot boxer shorts are lucky
Ooh-wee.
because he wore them during these successful presentations.
Oh, Kevin. But it makes a point. We all do this. We connect things that happen close together, even if there's no real link.
It's like that time I wore this specific shirt to a job interview and I got the job.
Did the shirt get you the job?
Probably not, but it's easy to make that connection, to think it was lucky.
Totally. We create these stories, these narratives to make sense of the world.
Right.
But sometimes those stories, they lead us in the wrong direction. That's why we have so many superstitions, like doing a rain dance and then it rains and we think, oh, the dance worked.
Uh-huh, yeah.
So the takeaway here is to question those associations. Is there a real connection? Or is it just your brain messing with you?
And then there's this self-selection bias.
Hmm.
Dobelli has this example of people complaining about the gender ratio in their company.
Right.
But they're only looking at it from their perspective within that one company. They're not considering, the broader industry trends or societal factors.
Or people being amazed by the miracle of their own existence, as if it couldn't have happened any other way.
But we're only seeing things from our own point of view.
Exactly. And recognizing this bias can help us, well, step outside our bubble, to see the bigger picture.
Speaking of bubbles, let's talk about information biases. The idea that more information always equals better decisions. This one, I gotta admit, hit close to home.
Oh, why is that?
Well, Dobelli talks about this endless cycle of research, comparing, and second-guessing ourselves when making decisions. And he even uses my hotel booking saga as an example.
Oh, right. You already found a good hotel with good reviews, but you spent hours, didn't you?
Hours looking for more information, only to end up right back where I started.
Exhausted, I bet.
Exhausted, and no closer to a better decision.
Sometimes more information just makes us freeze up.
Right, we get overwhelmed and second-guess ourselves.
Yeah.
So where do you get caught in that information overload trap?
Oh, for me, it's definitely gadgets, like trying to pick a new phone or something. I'm reading reviews forever.
Yeah, I hear ya.
Yeah.
Recognizing that we're doing this can help us figure out when we actually have enough info to make a good call.
So true.
Now, shifting gears a bit to those internal battles we face, Dobelli explores cognitive dissonance. You know, that feeling of discomfort when our actions don't match our beliefs. Like when I buy a fancy coffee, but I'm trying to save money.
And then you spend the rest of the day justifying it, right?
Exactly. Telling myself I deserved a treat, or it's just one time. But Dobelli points to this study where students, they were paid to lie about a boring task.
Mm.
And those who were paid less, they actually rated the task as more enjoyable.
Really?
Yeah, because they had to convince themselves it wasn't that bad to justify the lie.
That's so crazy. Our brains are weird.
Right, we twist things around to protect ourselves.
Yeah, but seeing this, understanding it, is crucial for making better decisions.
It's not about beating ourselves up for past choices. It's about learning from them. And that brings us to the allure of instant gratification, what Dobelli calls hyperbolic discounting. It's that tendency to choose the reward now, even if it means missing a bigger reward later.
Oh, like the marshmallow experience.
Exactly. Those kids who had to choose between eating one marshmallow now or waiting and getting two later, oh, that experiment is so good.
It shows how hard it is to resist that I want it now urge. And we see it all the time, right?
Oh, yeah.
People with credit card debt, they buy things they can't afford because they want it now.
It's like we forget that delayed gratification can get us so much more.
Right.
But Dobelli, he even takes aim at that whole live each day as if it were your last philosophy.
Oh, what does he say about that?
He jokes that if we actually did that, we'd probably end up broke, sick, and in jail.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right? But his point is we need to enjoy the present, but also set ourselves up for a good future.
Exactly. Find that balance.
Now, speaking of the future, Dobelli also talks about how, external rewards can actually hurt intrinsic motivation.
You mean like being motivated by something other than the task itself?
Yeah, especially for stuff we find meaningful. He calls it motivation crowding. There's this example about a daycare that started fining parents for being late.
Oh, to discourage them from being late.
But instead of less lateness, it actually got worse.
Really? Why?
The parents started seeing the fine as just a fee.
A price they were willing to pay.
Yeah, to be late. It's counterintuitive, but it shows how external rewards can backfire.
Yeah, sometimes they do.
So what's the takeaway? Maybe it's about realizing that motivation isn't always about rewards and punishments.
Maybe it's about the joy of the activity itself or a sense of purpose.
I like that. And this actually connects to Dobelli's discussion of the placebo effect.
The placebo effect.
Yeah, like when people feel better after taking a sugar pill because they think it's real medicine.
Right, right. But that effect, it goes way beyond medicine.
It does.
There's also the Rosenthal effect. That shows how our expectations can actually change how others behave.
Really?
In one study, teachers were told that some students were like high potential,
Oh.
even though those students were randomly chosen.
Wow.
But those students, they ended up doing better.
So the teacher's expectations, they kind of made it happen.
Exactly. It's not just our beliefs affecting us, it's about our beliefs affecting others too.
It all comes back to the power of expectations and the stories we tell.
Right.
Dobelli even uses the example of those pointless highway signs. You know, the ones that say, "We're fixing the road for you."
Oh yeah, like we didn't know that already.
Exactly. But it gives us a reason, a sense of control. And it shows that even when the reason's obvious, we still want that explanation.
We crave it.
Our brains, they're always trying to make sense of things.
Yeah, even if it means making up explanations where they aren't needed.
And speaking of how our brains see the world, Dobelli talks about this affect heuristic thing, which is how our emotions can color our judgments.
Like how our feelings about something like Harley-Davidson motorcycles could change how we see how safe they are.
Right. If you associate Harleys with freedom, you might downplay the risks.
Exactly. Emotions act like a filter, shaping how we see and evaluate information. And this is super important when we're thinking about risk.
It's not just logic, it's feelings too, often without us even realizing it.
Yeah. And then there's the difference between risk and uncertainty.
Okay, how are those different?
So with risk, you know the odds, like rolling a die or playing roulette.
Right.
But uncertainty, those odds are unknown. And that's where things get tricky.
Makes sense.
Dobelli uses this thought experiment, the Ellsberg paradox, to show this. It's about two boxes with colored balls, one with a known ratio of red and black balls, and the other, the ratio's unknown. Even though the odds might be better in the unknown box, Most people go for the one with the known odds, because not knowing makes us uncomfortable.
Ambiguity, we don't like it.
Nope. But a lot of life is about navigating uncertainty.
Right, you can't let fear stop you.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about self-perception. Dobelli had this idea of the introspection illusion, which is basically we think we know ourselves super well just from looking inward.
Like we have this special access to our own minds.
Yeah. And he uses this crazy experiment to prove his point. People were asked to pick their favorite face from a bunch of photos. Then the researchers secretly swapped the photos.
They're swapped them.
Yeah. And then the people had to explain why they chose the face they actually rejected.
Wait, they were defending a choice they didn't even make.
It shows how good we are at coming up with stories to explain what we do, even if those stories aren't true.
Oh, wow. It makes you wonder how much of what we think we know about ourselves is just made up.
Yeah, and this illusion, it can be dangerous. We overestimate how right we are and misjudge people who disagree with us.
We end up in these echo chambers just hearing what we want to hear.
Exactly. So how do we fight this? Dobelli says we got to seek out different perspectives and be open to the possibility that we might be wrong.
Humility is key.
Dobelli also talks a lot about focus and making tough choices. He gives these examples like a writer working on 24 books at the same time and a guy dating 3 women.
Oh, wow.
It's that fear of missing out.
We want to do it all.
He calls it the inability to close doors.
But keeping all those doors open, it comes at a cost, right?
Definitely. We spread ourselves too thin, and we miss out on the satisfaction of really focusing on what matters.
Right.
So his advice is to have a strategy, to choose what we won't do.
It's saying no to something.
So we can say yes to the best things.
Now, shifting to storytelling, Dobelli talks about the identifiable victim effect. He says that personal stories hit us harder than statistics.
Like that saying, 1 death is a tragedy, 1,000,000 deaths is a statistic.
Yeah, exactly. Our brains connect with stories way more than numbers.
And he links this to the illusion of attention. We think we see everything important, but our brains are always filtering stuff out.
Right. We miss things.
It's like those drivers who are so focused on their GPS, they drive straight into a flooded road.
Oh, no.
We need to be aware of what we might be missing.
It's not just paying attention, it's paying attention to the right things.
And that leads us to domain dependence, which is how hard it is to take what you know from one area and use it in another.
He has this example of a Nobel Prize-winning economist.
A Nobel Prize winner.
Who couldn't manage his own investments. It's crazy. It shows that just because you're an expert in one thing, it doesn't mean you're an expert in everything.
So true.
And then there's the illusion of skill, where we overestimate how much skill matters in areas where luck plays a big part.
Like in investing.
He points out that if you compare how investment advisors do over a few years, there's not much connection.
Really?
Yeah, it means a lot of their success or failure, it's just luck.
Huh. So skill matters, obviously, but luck matters too.
We need to remember that.
Definitely.
So maybe we should be a bit easier on ourselves when things go wrong and not judge others so quickly either.
It's a good point.
It's about knowing that there are things we can't control, even if we like to think we can.
Now, let's talk about how our attention gets manipulated. Dobelli introduces the salience effect, where we focus too much on info that's like vivid, even if it's not that important statistically.
Oh, I know what you mean. Like how we worry about shark attacks or plane crashes, even though they're super rare.
Yeah. Those events, they stick in our minds, and we think they're more likely than they are.
We're drawn to the dramatic.
And this can make us make bad decisions.
We gotta be careful, especially with those scary headlines or investment fads.
Yeah, we need to step back, look at the data, and see the bigger picture.
Always.
So let's dive into behavioral economics. Dobelli talks about the house money effect, which is how we treat money differently depending on where it came from.
Okay, interesting.
We're more likely to gamble with money we won or were given, even though it's still money.
Right. It's like we see it as play money.
Like when you win at the casino and you suddenly feel like you can't lose.
Yeah.
The point is, treat all money the same.
Don't get reckless just because you got lucky.
Now, let's talk about something everyone struggles with. Procrastination.
Oh, yeah.
Dobelli says it's not just laziness.
There's more to it.
It's often about anxiety and fear of failing. We put things off because they feel too big.
Or we're scared of not doing them perfectly.
But putting things off just makes the stress worse.
It does.
So what can we do? Dobelli suggests breaking big tasks down into smaller ones.
That's a good one.
Setting deadlines and even telling others about them to stay accountable.
Accountability helps.
It's about taking action and realizing that small steps, over time, can lead to big progress.
I like that.
Finally, Dobelli asks this question that has puzzled philosophers for ages. Why is there something rather than nothing?
Whoa, that's deep.
It makes you think about the nature of reality, and there might not be an answer, but just thinking about it can help us appreciate the wonder of everything.
It's a good reminder that there's always more to learn.
And that's it for part 1 of our deep dive into the art of thinking clearly. We've covered a lot, and your brain's probably feeling full. So take some time to process all this. Think about where you might be falling into these thinking traps. Are you letting your emotions get in the way? Are you resisting new ideas just because they're not yours? Are you overestimating yourself or underestimating the role of luck?
These are good questions.
By seeing these patterns, we can start making better choices and become clearer thinkers.
Yeah, we can.
So we've talked about happiness and biases and all those things that can trip us up mentally. Now, I want to dive into how our thinking is shaped by, like, social dynamics.
Yeah.
You know, Dobelli has this concept called the false consensus effect.
The false what?
False consensus. It's where we tend to think that other people agree with us way more than they actually do.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Like, we assume everyone sees the world the same way we do.
Right. He has this funny example where, like, students were asked to wear this sandwich board.
A sandwich board.
Yeah, with a slogan on it and said, "Eat it, Joe's." And the students who agreed to wear it, they thought most other people would agree to wear it too.
And the ones who didn't.
They thought most others would refuse as well. It shows how much our own choices, like, color how we see what's normal.
It's like we each think we're part of the sensible majority, even though that's kind of impossible.
It is. And this bias, it can be a real problem when we need to understand different points of view.
Oh, for sure. Whether it's politics or social issues or even just deciding where to go for dinner.
Right. Recognizing this can help us be more open-minded.
And less likely to just dismiss someone because they think differently.
Exactly. So it's a good reminder to, like, check ourselves when we're feeling super sure that we're right about something.
Yeah, there's a good chance we might not be as right as we think.
And speaking of perceptions, Dobelli talks about the power of first impressions and last impressions.
Like, you only get one chance to make a good first impression.
Yeah. He calls them the primacy and recency effects. He describes this experiment where two groups are given the same list of adjectives to describe someone, but, like, in reverse order.
So same words, different order.
And people form totally different impressions just based on whether the good traits or the bad traits came first.
Wow, so the order really matters.
Yeah, the order we get information can really change how we see things.
Think about, like, those fancy lobbies you see in corporate offices. They're not just about looking nice.
It's about making a statement.
Yeah, they're designed to wow you right from the start.
Or job interviews. That first handshake, how you dress, your early answers, it can really set the tone for the whole thing.
It's true. So we need to be aware of the impressions we're making.
But also know that our own first impressions of others, they might be off because of these effects.
We should take time to gather more info before we judge.
Now let's switch to ideas and innovation. Dobelli talks about this not invented here syndrome, or NIH syndrome. It's this tendency to favor our own ideas, even if other people's ideas are better.
Oh, so like, my idea is the best because it's mine.
Exactly. Like, we're too proud of our own stuff, even if it's not the best way to do things. He gives the example of roundabouts.
Roundabouts, like those traffic circles.
Yeah. They were invented way back in the 1960s in Britain, but it took forever for other countries to start using them.
Even though they're safer.
We resist things just because they came from somewhere else.
It's better to be open to ideas no matter where they come from.
Sometimes the best solutions, they come from the most unexpected places.
You never know.
Now, let's talk about the unpredictable. Those events that, like, totally catch us off guard and change everything. Dobelli calls these black swan events.
Black swan events?
He says we're terrible at predicting them.
Why is that?
Our minds tend to focus on what we already know, and we underestimate what we don't know. He uses the example of, well, the discovery of black swans in Australia.
Oh, right. Everyone thought all swans were white until then.
It shows that even our strongest assumptions can be wrong.
So we need to be ready for surprises.
Yeah, and build systems that can handle shocks. But it's not just about avoiding bad black swan events.
What else is there?
It's also about being in a position to benefit from good ones.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Think about things like creative projects or starting a business where there's, like, No limit to how well they could do.
If you write a book or invent something amazing or start a company that takes off, you're basically setting yourself up for a potential positive black swan.
Like becoming a best-selling author or building a billion-dollar business. It's like buying a lottery ticket, but you're actively creating those chances for something amazing to happen.
Of course, there's no guarantee.
Right.
But by putting yourself out there and embracing the unknown, you're making it more likely to catch those good black swans.
Now, on the flip side, how can we protect ourselves from those bad black swan events?
Well, being smart with money is important. Avoiding too much debt, having a backup plan, diversifying investments so you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, basically building a life that can handle a few bumps in the road.
Exactly. It's about balancing that pursuit of the extraordinary with being practical and prepared.
Now, going back to personal success, Dobelli challenges this idea that skill is the main thing that drives achievement.
You mean it's not all about talent and hard work?
He says we overestimate skill and underestimate luck, especially in things like investing or entrepreneurship.
So you're saying luck plays a big role.
He points out that if you look at the performance of investment advisors over a few years, there's very little correlation.
Really? So it's kind of random who does well.
It suggests that a lot of it, it's factors they can't control.
That's interesting. So skill is important, but so is luck.
We need to remember that.
Yeah.
And maybe be kinder to ourselves when things don't work out.
And not be so quick to judge others, too.
It's about recognizing that there are things we can't always see that are affecting the outcome.
Okay, I'm starting to see the pattern here.
Now, let's talk about how our attention can be, manipulated. Dobelli brings up the salience effect, which is where we tend to overemphasize information that's really vivid or memorable, even if it's not actually that important.
Oh, I know what you mean. Like how we're more scared of sharks than cars, even though cars are way more dangerous.
Yeah, it's because those shark attacks, they're so dramatic they stick in our minds.
They grab our attention.
And this can make us make irrational decisions based on fear.
So we got to be aware of this, especially when we see those scary headlines or get caught up in some kind of hype.
Step back, look at the facts, and see the bigger picture.
Good advice.
Now, let's get into behavioral economics a bit. Dobelli talks about the house money effect.
House money effect.
It's how we treat money differently depending on where it came from.
Oh, interesting.
We're more likely to gamble with money we've won,
Makes sense.
even though it's still money.
We see it as separate,
Right, like play money.
like at a casino. You win some, and then you're more willing to bet it.
But the point is, all money should be treated the same.
Don't be reckless just because you got lucky.
Now let's talk about procrastination. Dobelli says it's not just about being lazy.
Procrastination is a beast.
It's often connected to anxiety and fear of failing.
We put things off because they seem too big or scary.
Or we're scared of messing up.
But putting things off, it just makes us more stressed in the long run.
So what's the solution? Dobelli gives a few strategies. One is to break big tasks into smaller ones,
That's a classic, but it works.
set deadlines, and tell other people about them so you feel accountable.
I like that idea.
It's about switching from avoiding things to taking action. Small steps, over time, they lead to big progress.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Now, finally, Dobelli asks this, mind-blowing question that philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries. Why does anything exist at all?
Wow, that's a heavy one.
It makes you question everything we think we know about, like the universe.
And there might not even be an answer.
But just thinking about it can help us appreciate the mystery of everything.
It's a good reminder that we don't know everything.
And that's the end of part 2 of our deep dive into the art of thinking clearly. We've covered a lot, so take a moment to absorb it all. Think about where you might be falling into these thinking traps. Are your emotions clouding your judgment? Are you resisting new ideas? Are you overestimating your abilities or underestimating the role of luck?
Lots to think about.
By seeing these patterns, we can start to make better choices and become clearer thinkers.
Absolutely. It's a journey.
Okay, so ready to jump back into the art of thinking clearly? We've already uncovered so much about how our minds work, and I'm really excited to explore more of these fascinating ideas with you.
Yeah, Dobelli really packs this book with insights about all the ways our brains can, well, mislead us.
It's true.
Yeah.
And in this final part, we're going to look at a few more of those mental traps. One that stood out to me was the availability bias.
The availability bias, huh?
Yeah. It's how we tend to overestimate the likelihood of things that are easy to remember or that are, really vivid in our minds.
Oh, I see. So, like, if there's been a lot of news about burglaries lately, you might start feeling like your house is going to get broken into, even if the overall crime rate hasn't actually gone up.
Exactly. We create this mental shortcut based on the information that's right there in front of us, even if it's not really representative of the bigger picture.
It's like our brains are saying, if I can easily think of an example, it must be common.
Right. And this bias, it can affect everything from our investments to our relationships. Like we might avoid flying after a big plane crash, even though driving is statistically way more dangerous.
Or we might judge a whole group of people based on just a couple of bad experiences.
So how do we fight this availability bias?
Well, I think it starts with being aware of where we're getting our information from and trying to get a broader perspective. Instead of just relying on anecdotes or those attention-grabbing headlines, we need to look at the data and consider the whole picture.
Be more critical of the information we consume.
Exactly.
So let's move on to a bias that often pops up in our social interactions, the halo effect.
The halo effect.
Yeah. It's that tendency to judge someone's whole character based on just one good trait. Like if someone's really attractive, we might automatically assume they're also smart and kind and trustworthy.
Even though those things have nothing to do with each other.
Exactly. Dobelli uses the example of celebrities endorsing products.
Hmm.
We might be more likely to buy a certain coffee just because our favorite actor is in the commercial, even if the coffee is terrible.
It's like that positive trait, like being famous or good looking, creates this halo that makes everything else about them seem better too.
And this halo effect, it can work in the opposite direction too, right? A single bad trait can create a negative impression that colors everything.
Yeah, for sure. So how do we avoid falling into this trap?
Well, I think it's about being more intentional about separating our judgments as specific traits from our overall impression of the person.
So like just because someone is great at one thing doesn't mean they're great at everything.
Exactly. We need to be more nuanced in our thinking and avoid those sweeping generalizations. Speaking of generalizations, let's talk about the anchoring bias.
Anchoring bias sounds nautical.
Well, it's about how we get fixated on the first piece of information we get, even if it's totally random or irrelevant.
Oh, like when you're negotiating the price of a car.
Exactly. If the salesperson starts by throwing out a ridiculously high number, that number becomes an anchor. And all the other offers, even if they're lower, will seem more reasonable by comparison.
It's like that first number sets a standard in our minds, even if it has nothing to do with the real value.
Right. And this can happen everywhere. Shopping for a laptop, negotiating a salary, even just deciding how much to tip at a restaurant. So how do we avoid getting anchored?
I think it's about being aware of the bias and actively trying to detach ourselves from that initial piece of information. Do your research, compare different options, and don't let that first number control your thinking.
Now let's talk about something that can make it really hard to learn from our mistakes. The sunk cost fallacy.
Sunk costs.
It's that tendency to keep investing in something, time, money, effort, just because we've already put so much into it, even if it's clearly not working anymore.
Oh, I know what you mean. It's like staying in a bad relationship just because you've been together for years.
Or pouring more money into a failing business because you've already invested so much.
We get attached to those past investments.
Yeah, we end up throwing good money after bad. The key here is to realize that what you've already invested is irrelevant to the current decision. What matters is the situation right now and what's likely to happen in the future.
It's about being able to walk away even when it hurts.
And that brings us to a bias that can be especially dangerous in groups, groupthink.
Groupthink. So like when everyone in a group starts thinking the same way.
Yeah, but it's more than that. Is when the group prioritizes harmony and consensus over critical thinking and making independent decisions.
So like if everyone's afraid to disagree with the leader, the group might make a bad decision just to avoid conflict.
Exactly. And this can have serious consequences, especially when the stakes are high. The key to avoiding groupthink is to encourage people to speak up, even if they have a different opinion, and to create a culture where it's safe to challenge assumptions and to value diverse perspectives.
It's about recognizing that the best decisions often come from healthy debate and a willingness to consider all sides of an issue.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to quickly mention a few more biases that Dobelli talks about in his book. First, there's the negativity bias.
Negativity bias.
It explains why those bad experiences tend to stick with us more than good ones.
Oh, I definitely feel that one. Why is that?
Well, it probably helped our ancestors survive. But nowadays, it can make us overly cautious and kind of obsessed with the negative.
Interesting.
Then there's the confirmation bias, which is that tendency to look for information that supports what we already believe and to ignore stuff that doesn't.
Yeah. We all do that sometimes. It can make us stubborn.
It can. And finally, there's the endowment effect, which explains why we tend to overvalue things just because we own them.
Oh, like when you're selling something and you think it's worth way more than anyone else does?
Exactly. It's crazy how our brains work, right?
Mm.
All these biases are constantly influencing how we see things, how we make decisions.
It's a lot to take in.
But the good news is that by understanding these biases, we can start to minimize their effects. We can make more rational choices and be less likely to fall into those mental traps.
Dobelli's book really is like a guidebook for better thinking.
It is. It reminds us to be humble about what we know and to approach the world with an open mind. And with that, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the art of thinking clearly. We've covered a lot of ground, but remember, this is just the start.
It's a journey.
There's always more to learn about how our minds work. And the more we learn, the better equipped we are to make good decisions, handle tough situations, and live more fulfilling lives.
It's about constantly growing and evolving.
So keep those brains engaged. If you want to explore these ideas further, I highly recommend checking out Dobelli's book. It's full of even more insights and examples that will challenge your thinking.
It's a book that can really change how you see the world.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and keep thinking clearly.